Hello, listeners, and welcome to another episode of eCommerce. I have Nicholas Hernandez today at the show. Nicholas, how are you? Welcome.
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
Great. Nicholas, Director of E-commerce at Felina, plenty of experience both on the platform side, on the marketing side of things, actually managing the full funnel. So let's start by introducing yourself. What do you do at Felina? And maybe share with us more about Felina, what Felina is doing in the marketplace.
Sure. I'm the director of e-commerce, and really what that looks like is that I'm managing the entirety of the customer funnel. So I'm working with our teams and partners on top of funnel, organic, paid, middle of funnel, everything on the website, CRO, merchandising, working on different strategic promotions to engage our core customers and new customers, and then at the bottom of the funnel with retention efforts and working on refreshing our loyalty program, working with our internal teams on email, SMS, our app push notifications, everything from the top to the bottom of the customer journey is in my department.
Nice.
And yeah, yeah.
No, that was like a great introduction to top of funnel, middle funnel, and bottom of funnel. So thank you so much for that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. You talk to ecom people every single day, and you start just using shorthand, and you just go into the lingo. And yesterday, I was having dinner with some of my wife's friends, and I mentioned, "Well, I'm director of ecom," and they said, "Ecom," and I said,
Mm,
"Yeah, e-commerce." And they said, "Is that like buying stuff online, or?" So
yeah.
sometimes we get in our little bubble. I always want to try to, you know give an intro as if people maybe just have a vague understanding of it, or just need a refresher on the
Yeah.
entire funnel.
Yeah.
But a little bit about Felina. So the company's been around 40 years, but for the last 35 years of that's been exclusively wholesale. So you're going to find it in department stores, you're going to find it in big box, club retailers, and that for the last, good chunk of the company's life is how people found that product. And about 5 years ago, they decided, hey, we should probably start looking to sell online, and they kind of got a website up, and then a couple years later, I came along, and really what I've been doing since I've been there is kind of building a tech stack and building a funnel as if it were a direct consumer company first, because you can get some good momentum when you just build it as a secondary thought to a wholesale company. But if you want to really make it work and make it thrive, it almost needs to be built as if it were a D2C. So that's what we've been working on at Felina since I started there.
Yeah. It all sounds great in theory, but how do you balance innovation with a 35 years organization, such a legacy history, right?
Yeah, it is interesting. Although we're still, I will say, I have fortunately for me, we have not tapped out the customer's brand affinity. We have a very devoted fan base because of our 35-year history,
Hmm.
and we are just now starting to engage with them and interact with them and tell them that we're online and try to move those sales to a kind of one-to-one relationship. So there will be a point where we will have kind of saturated that and we will be looking elsewhere. But I do think that in the short term, uh, it's not as much of a balancing act because we do still have all of this untapped potential.
Yeah. And it seems that you've been taking kind of a gradual approach. Maybe it's probably not the best definition, but you actually learned what works. And as you said, there is an established customer base, a great brand sentiment, and just leverage
Yeah,
on top of that, just announcing step by step about the online activities, right?
yeah, and it's been a little bit of the cart before the horse, because if you were building a D2C company from zero, uh, you'd at some point you'd be looking at product market fit, and you'd be looking at who your customers are, and you'd be kind of that would be kind of a crucial step to say, okay, these are our people, these are maybe the people we want to be getting,
Hmm.
this is not really our customer, but these people buy, and you kind of have this good understanding, this bell curve of, okay, these are who's buying from us. Because the company was historically wholesale, you're selling to the buyer, one human being,
Yeah.
and then whoever buys, how many times they had to come into the store to see it, what interaction they had, what were their takeaways. You don't get any of that information. It's all analog.
Hmm.
So we're tapping into what we know is working while also then trying to build out these steps that we would have been doing if it were D2C first, like having customer profiles or even kind of understanding who it is we're marketing towards. And we're using a little bit of some top of funnel to market that lookalike audiences with who we are getting that's coming in, and trying to really quantify and understand who we have, and then kind of tear off from there. But what's also interesting, and I'm sure you're not surprised, is that the online customer for Felina today is not the in-store customer, by and large.
Yeah.
There is overlap. There's a little bit of overlap, but it's if you were going to Costco to buy, a pair of our leggings or, some kind of other basic item, you were going to Costco and you were buying it. The only reason you're coming to our website is maybe that it rotated out of Costco and you still would like to purchase that item. And then we have you as a .com customer. So
Hmm.
it's there's a lot of information there because we're able to grab that traffic of people that have known us, but you can't use it one-to-one to say, well, then that's our customer. Let's market towards that.
Yeah. Yeah. Just to put the episode into context, tell us about Felina's products and your personas
Oh
that you
yeah.
are targeting.
So it's historically it's been women's intimates and basics, and they have in the last year or two we have leggings, so some like a little bit of apparel and pajamas, and as we go into the rest of this year and early next year, that kind of leggings, athleisure, lounge, ready to wear kind of stuff is the space that we're going to be looking to expand into. But the core of our catalog today is going to be women's basics.
Yeah. So I see this expansion of the product line, right? Is it something that is inherently, the way the company is working, or again, using data, or trying to do some research or find out what works, or how this product development is shaping,
I
your
think
marketing plans
it's
and customer experience? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's because of the way that the company is structured currently. It was something that was working or, signed off on for the wholesale side of the business,
Hmm.
but we're adapting it and, being being from the startup space, we can be very adaptable and we can take what we're given and make it work and make it look like that was the plan the whole time. So we're taking the roadmap that had been currently set out for the next couple seasons for wholesale and making it work for .com. And what it looks like in .com is that I get more opportunities to cross sell. I get more opportunities to upsell. I can have I have a plethora of customers that have only been buying one category. I get to send them down the education funnel on those new categories and see if we can, bump up their LTV. So it's it's honestly it's working great
Hmm.
on the website front to have an expanded catalog because niching down is really good, but you naturally hit kind of a point of saturation. So
Yeah.
this lets us kind of still be working down that path. We're very much basics first, but I get to now show you something else that we do.
Got it. Got it. So let's talk about some of the fundamentals for you. Let's talk about marketing. What's marketing for you? What are your belief about marketing? And probably I'm referring to like the storytelling, the messaging part of it. How do
Yeah,
you approach this?
I I I think that the best marketing is the marketing that almost feels like it could have just been a story or a narrative or a piece of information that you are genuinely excited to see or hear or interact with. And you can do that more or less at different companies. We integrate storytelling as much as we can at Felina with the development that goes into the product. A lot of our products are solution oriented, so there's some natural storytelling there.
Hmm.
But I think the most I've ever been able to exercise that muscle and kind of take it to 11 was when I was at a beauty startup some years ago, and we were doing we were doing a lot of licensing work with Disney, among other people. But the stuff with Disney was really interesting because we were premium. We were premium cosmetics as far as price point goes, geared towards adults exclusively. But we had been able to make Disney branded licensed cosmetics geared towards adult at a, $50 to $75 price point,
Hmm.
which nobody had really been able to crack that. If it had been Disney branded and in that cosmetic space, it was very much seen as junior or a tchotchke or some kind of like little toy mirror or something that you saw in an end cap at a Sephora. But we were really driving this idea of genuine, authentic storytelling for that customer, and it worked. And it worked because we were making products as as fans ourselves. So we were starting at that point of inspiration on what's the product assortment, what's the go-to-market strategy, how are we communicating value. We were starting as fans. And as fans, through the entire development process, we were letting that affinity drive us. And what that ended up looking like is when you brought it to market and you started to tell the story, the people, almost as if sharing stories with a friend that also shares that same affinity with you, it wasn't marketing, it was storytelling between people that understood this intellectual property. And buying the product or purchasing or kind of like getting the thing physically was just another step in that story, in that narrative that you two were sharing. It was not the final destination
Hmm.
or the intent of the marketing. And I mean, it sounds very genuine and altruistic. At the end of the day, it's still a business, but um, if you can't phone that in, you can't phone in passion. I think with all the money in the world, you cannot develop something that you genuinely do not care about and have people that do care about it
Hmm.
say, "Oh yeah, they definitely cared about it," and um, that becomes kind of you call it a moat or a secret sauce, but it becomes a differentiator, and you can play with brands that have much larger scale if you're able to do something that they cannot just pay for to copy. We were, as a small beauty brand, if I tried to go after, the red lipstick category or waterproof mascara or anything that was really not defendable, if I made any kind of dent, Estee Lauder tomorrow could outspend me into oblivion across any, customer
Sure.
channel. They could make my slotting fees in store unreasonable. They just have that kind of power because they can spend at it. But if they could take a license and I took a license and I put out something that was so well thought out that it was like somebody who's just in love with that IP made it, when we both take it to market and try to speak to that customer, even if they see their ad 15 times and mine once, they just needed that once because I'm not trying to sell them something that they need to be warmed up to. There is no um, what is it? There is no kind of like information consideration, there is no funnel. When
Hmm.
you're a super fan about something, you seek it out. You are looking for it. Your eyes are always kind of going, "Oh, what was that?" I don't know if you ever if you've been to, there's stores called Box Lunch. It's like a sister company to Hot Topic.
Hmm. Okay.
But they basically all they do is that they sell licensed merchandise, brand affinity, things like every inch of the store is a specific kind of IP. It's Nightmare Before Christmas, it's Scooby Doo, it's Disney stuff, anime
Hmm.
stuff, and those types of products with those types of customers, they don't need to be sold anything. They're beelining in to that product because they share that brand as a piece of their personality.
Yeah.
So tapping into that, I think, is the best type of market, it's the best type of product development. Because honestly, we would sell out of those collections in 72 hours tops.
Wow.
Um, and they were not mass market. It was not, $5 lipsticks. These were $36 lipsticks. These were $75 shadow palettes. These were premium cosmetics, all manufactured in the US. And I think we just tapped into something special. So I mean, maybe down the road if Felina wants to get into licensing like that, but I do think that that's a little piece that I learned that I carry with me is if you can if you can think about that in the product development ideally, but in the marketing, what would the most super fan type of customer respond to? How would they be developing a product and put yourself in that mindset? Um, this obviously the super fans will buy it and then they become your brand advocates, but
Hmm.
even to a lesser extent, the average fan that maybe has a slight understanding will see what looks like intense effort and go, wow, that they must really care. They must really be doing it right because, you know, even if they maybe see, oh, that super fan, that other customer, they bought it and they're crazy about that stuff. Or even if they don't, they will, without being able to quantify it, they'll understand that there's a lot of effort. I think that's another thing is that people can't always quantify why something looks good or bad or why graphic design is good or bad or editing is good or bad. It's, people can't always tell you why a certain marketing campaign was good or bad if they don't have the background or the understanding of it, but they will action on good or bad marketing as if they understood it
Yeah.
perfectly.
So they will action on good or bad marketing probably because there is some kind of an impact on the emotional level, maybe,
They
right?
don't know.
Whether
Yeah, they don't.
they don't
They
know,
couldn't tell you
they couldn't
why.
tell why, right? So you talk about the process that you getting deeper in the research and in trying to come up with those messaging
Hmm.
statements that are just not just a simple or the surface rational probably messages, but going into more deeper levels of trying to understand emotions and what impacts behaviors,
I
right?
think that's it's such a moat that you can build around your product if you can tap into that space.
Hmm.
Because if not, you're essentially dealing as a commodity, and with a commodity, it's going to be a race to the bottom. I I myself personally like have no brand affinity when it comes to, I don't know, paper towels. So if I'm buying paper towels and I see one that's a little bit less than another one, they've
Yeah.
lost me as a customer. And I know that they try to have branding, and they try to, to pitch me, but it's not something that I'm personally, connected with. But there are other things that I have intense brand affinity for, and I won't just swap because I have just such a connection to that product or to the maybe the vision of it. Like I have a little Bigoletti, like a stovetop espresso machine that you
Hmm.
make on the stovetop.
Hmm.
Um, that is my favorite way to make coffee. It reminds me of my childhood because I'm Cuban and I cannot be sold on a different kind of coffee machine.
Nice.
But whenever I see an ad for one of those or I see it in the store, it could be the silliest thing, and I go, maybe I need another one. I think I might need another one. Maybe a bigger size for when people come over, or like,
Mm,
well, this one does the milk, um, and I just well, I have such a brand affinity for it that anything they're doing is already working on me
yeah.
way harder than it needs to.
So for any leaders out there, brand leaders who are trying to create some kind of a process to support everything that we just discussed in the last few minutes, and things that you do also, in your career and Felina, there is some kind of a process or some high level steps that usually you need to take to come up with a better process, get more deeper engagement, in terms of
Yeah.
messaging and marketing campaigns.
So I guess we'll go across the funnel, because that's how I started.
Hmm.
Um, I've brought this up on other podcasts that I've been on, but a good cheat code for me when I go into a new organization and something that I think is very useful is that I actually just take a piece of paper and I draw a funnel, and then I look at our P&L or whatever you have that breaks down everything that you're paying for, and I just start writing what the brand is or what the name of the company. And after a while, you start to know the names and you kind of know what they do and where they sit on the funnel. And I draw the entirety of our P&L on a funnel. And I kind of, you look at it in that moment going, okay, where can there be, where's there too much redundancy? Where do I have gaps? And I start from the hard numbers, because I know that that's what leadership is also looking at. They're not in the
Mm.
weeds and the nuance with me, they're in the numbers. So I start there as far as the process goes on the non-creative side. I see what we can get rid of, I see what we're missing, and then I start at the top. Um, Mostly because for Felina, and for actually, it's kind of weird, the last couple organizations, they didn't really have a good organic social strategy. So I tend to start at the top just to make sure that we're saying something, because that,
Hmm.
when you have like a brand mission or a brand statement or any kind of like messaging on who you are, why you are, all that jazz, the kind of the most watered down version of it is going to be at the top of the funnel, because it's kind of where that needs to be. So I go there to see what are we saying, and what does it look like compared to the website? Are we actually saying a version of who we are, or are we just throwing out like a discount and some random product shots, and it all looks very good, but it's not telling me anything? Um, so I start there, and then of course right next to it is all of our paid media. So then I start looking at the paid media. Is there anything that's not performing? Is there anything that needs to be reworked? Usually it's either a content issue or a segment issue, and you're not segmenting to the right audiences, or the creative is not telling anything compelling worth clicking over to the site. Um, Usually you make yourself a checklist at that point, saying, okay, we know we're in creative and targeting. Both of those require, we need to know what we want to say, and we need to know who we're saying it to. So then you move down to the middle of funnel, and you kind of take that checklist with you, and we start looking at heat maps of the website. Uh, where are people falling off? What are people gravitating towards? The thing that I just saw up top on telling me who we are and what we do, does that look like this website, or do those look like two different companies? And you start looking to see if you're building kind of a cohesive journey. Um, at that point, I'm looking at getting stuff reshot if it needs to be, because I'm going to have new images on the website and new images up top in my organic and paid. Um, and then you go to the bottom of funnel and you go, okay, everybody who has purchased from us, what have we said to them? What have we talked to them? How often do they repurchase? What do we say when they haven't purchased? You start kind of looking under the hood at all of your flows across every customer touch point, which for us, for at Felina, was email, SMS, and app push, because we have an app.
Hmm.
So you start kind of dissecting there, and honestly, then it becomes you rinse, wash, and repeat, because you're not going to get everything on the first go. Um, and you trim down the P&L some, you make sure everything's still working, you bring on a new vendor, you see how they're working to the flow, you go back to the top, how is it working? What are we doing? Back to the middle, what's my CRO like? What are my heat maps saying? Am I missing something? You go down to the bottom, are we getting good open rates? Are we segmenting efficiently? People aren't marking as spam. Like, it just becomes, you're just kind of a maintenance man up and down the funnel, up and down the funnel. But I do like to start from the very top as a brand new customer, essentially, and then slowly start to work my way down. Um, and then also, I kind of went. I sorry, my brain just kind of jumped around there, but it's you're looking at the P&L. You're seeing where there's gaps, if there's any redundancies, and then you're kind of seeing everything in action as a brand new customer, and you're working your way down the funnel. That's kind of the way I tactically look at it from an organization standpoint. And then when you're talking about the creative, that you kind of get into kind of like the squishy soft skills creative side of it. It's not something that can be like, here's step one, here's step two. But when you're the easiest and hardest thing to say is, when you're thinking about the product, what would the most insane fan of that product say about it, think about it, want to know about it, especially for like advertising online or having it inform decisions on your website. This is not, print media or like a snappy national billboard campaign. Like, you need to be thinking about it in the way that a super fan would. So as they're scrolling every website and jumping around and getting an email and going through their messy digital life, something resonates with them enough that they'll stop for a moment. Not
Hmm.
that you trick them or threw a number that was so big as a discount that they had to stop, but actually kind of made them go, oh, I like that. I know that. Like, and what you've all of a sudden cut through the noise. What would they do? What would your best fan do? What would your the person that would just go crazy if they were in your office and being like, "Oh my God, you're all here, you're all here." Like, what do they like? What do they like about it? How can you take 10% of that fandom and put that in so that everybody that sees it gets a little taste of why they love it so much?
Hmm.
And I guess, I mean, that comes down to listening to your customer, which is also, I mean, I feel like that's table stakes now. I feel like every podcast is like, you got to listen to your customer, but
Yeah,
I mean, you really do.
yeah. How do you do that, right? Everyone talks about it, but
You
it's like,
know, I think it's important to listen to the two ends of your spectrum, because you have your bell curve of your people that are
mhm,
genuinely happy, genuinely buying. If they have a so-so experience, they'll probably come back. They're not the people you want to be looking at. You want to look at the people that love your brand, and the people that hate your brand,
like the
because y- you're gonna get the hyped up sentiments of everybody in the middle that felt indifferent to leave comment on the ends of the spectrum. Some people that had the best time ever will have the same best time ever as the people in the middle, but will never say anything. So you can extrapolate some of that from one end. And the people that had just an okay experience and maybe they turn and there's not a clear signal why in the data on why they ended up turning or why the AOV goes down might be resonated by the people at the other end that are incredibly unhappy, and one or two of the things they're saying speak to the entirety of the bell curve of your customers. So I think it's important to listen to both ends of the extreme. Because I mean, how many times have you as a customer just been kind of okay with a service and actually said, I'm going to leave a 3.5 star review and say
mhm,
that everything was pretty much fine?
yeah, yeah. It's a good idea, right? Because those in the middle, they don't have like an incentive or probably spending time in providing the real feedback. Just those on the extreme, the love, and hate, they're very active in,
And
making
they will
themselves
feel
heard all over, right? Yeah,
and they want to tell you
yeah,
one. So when it, as far as like trying to get out to the customer and say, please answer this survey or please do this thing, they are very more than happy to talk to you. And on the negative side, you have the opportunity to listen to their concerns and convert them into fans.
hmm,
If Because if they hear that you are listening, most brands will not listen. Most brands will not take the time to listen to those people. So if you can listen to them and convert them, they will tell, oh my God, I had this problem, and they reached out to me. Like, they're
wow,
real people, they're really working. And then your super fans, you co-opt those people to become your brand advocates.
hmm,
Those people are doing essentially like free affiliate work, because they're going out there, everybody they know, have you heard about this brand? This brand's the best thing ever. And you're not paying them like you would an affiliate to go out and spread that message. And it's just because of the love of the product. So why not nurture that and look to grow it?
sure, sure. And in terms of those marketing strategies and marketing channels, do you see anything that is working better these days, or is just making sure you do all the things, inbound, outbound, or earned versus owned, and just agile, experiment, and move, or there's something that
I
is, resonating better or to
No
be worth
sacred
mentioning?
cows
Yeah.
is resonating right now. Anything that had been working historically, you can't be in a place where you're looking at old breakdowns across media spend and going, well, Facebook historically always worked, or like this or that historically. Oh, this is not that time. We're past the wild west of the free data flowing that let us retarget everybody. Um, we're now getting to the point where privacy concerns are becoming um, more just kind of like table stakes, and software companies, hardware companies are building that in to answer the call that the customers are having, without consideration to what that does to the marketing landscape or how
Yeah.
we operate.
Yeah.
So you're going to be working with a whole part of your tech stack that overnight could become useless. Uh, it's a for me, it's a time of a lot of testing. So I'm leaning into retention because those are the most cost effective customers.
Sure.
And if you have any kind of community that's by accident or on purpose kind of forming around the product, you nurture those people, you grow those people, you get those people to bring in more people. Those are going to be the highest ROI the cheapest leads to convert. And as far as other channels, we're looking at the numbers. If something is not performing, it doesn't matter if it used to. Um, for us, Facebook used to be a big spender, like Facebook proper, not even Instagram. And the customer shift, people age out, it kind of stops working. You can't just keep spending into it going, well, that always worked for us. And you need to be open to new things. We're seeing really good movement on testing out some, pins on Pinterest, and that's delivering a phenomenal ROI. And that had been a channel we had not been operating on previously. So regardless of what has been working or what used to work, Facebook was down too many quarters in a row, pulled back the spend, test elsewhere. We're looking at CTV. TikTok is another channel. We're integrating our shop into it so that people can use TikTok Shop.
Nice.
And seeing we have good our products. It sits at a good price point to convert well on kind of the TikTok Shop channels from what we've seen. So we're gonna dive headfirst into that. If that explodes, that'll kind of be a interesting permutation of the e-commerce department as we kind of support that kind of little offshoot that's delivering a lot of momentum. It's just a time of a lot of experimentation, and if you're coming from a large legacy organization, this is a tough time because those ones kind of like pick a path and you're on it. But coming from startups, it's not it's old hat, and I think that's almost what was before I don't know, something that could be more or less valuable depending on the organization is now incredibly relevant if you have startup experience or if you're okay with situations that are dynamic and change rapidly day to day.
Yes.
You're treating this established kind of arm of this business almost like you would a startup. Something goes belly up overnight, or like you lose funding from a partner or something and you have to reorganize. It has to move like that.
Yeah. I mean, and your startup background is so helpful these days, right? Because of this lean and mean mentality, right? Move fast, break things, and
Yes,
being
it's
agile, right? In your mindset and trying to experiment
w-
and kill
we're
very
a,
early something that is not
we're
working.
a small tight team for the size of the organization,
Yeah.
and it's because we're essentially running ecom within this organization as a startup.
Yeah.
We're wearing a lot of hats. We're very agile. There's no time for kind of this like large bloated team. It's everybody is an A player, and we cut, we transition, we bring on new stuff like day by day.
Nice. So Nicholas, let's talk work-life balance. I mean, how do you how do
I know
you unwind, and what do you do outside of work?
I just talked about like being startup agile, working like crazy.
Yeah.
So work-life balance. I have a huge affinity for all things classic cars and like classic European cars specifically.
Okay.
So I've been because I'm in LA, so I've been driving up in the canyons, up around like the Malibu area, for years. And as much as I can get out there on the weekends, I will wake up very early and I will go out for a drive there and just I currently have a newer Miata, so it's not as classic European as I'd like it to be, but it's a 6 speed. So, I put the top down. It's nice and chilly. Um, it's very, very nice to just go out there and just be out in my version of nature and drive
Wow.
around. But
Nice.
yeah, that's that, and then also like working on it. I have there's a car down the street in the driveway that's been just sitting there. It's an old 70s MGB, and I'm very tempted to just make them a cash offer, like $500. I will push it out of your driveway and work on it and try to get it back up. But when I was little, my grandfather had an exotic car mechanic shop in Santa Monica. So I grew up kind of around those 70s, 80s, exotics, which at the time were a lot more difficult to import, get in here in the States. So I have that background in me a little bit, and also if it's not that, I will say I do enjoy because of the work that we did with Disney, and also my father used to work in feature animation at Disney. We go to Disneyland a lot now with my daughter, um, as much as we can. You know, maybe once or twice a month we try to get
Really?
down there.
Wow.
Yeah,
Nice.
but uh, that's a fun distraction, and it's it's funny. We go there to distract, and then because of our background there, we end up looking at the merchandise. We end up looking at the new products. We end up looking at their pricing strategy. We end up
Okay.
just kind of nerding out over the CPG products that they have there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I try to, you know, there's a lot going on in LA. I try to be in it as much as I can.
Nice. You have an entertainment background, right? We talked about your Disney experience, but also you work for Nickelodeon, and
I
that's
did. I
yeah.
did. That was kind of a crazy. I so two weeks out of high school, I was on a movie set.
Wow.
I was a I was a PA doing like on the low budget movies. I knew I wanted to work in TV, and I thought it was TV, or I thought it was something in like entertainment, but it was really telling stories. Like to like really thread this back to what we were talking about before, I was always a fan of telling stories and engaging people. I thought that was through the medium of TV and movies. I thought
Hmm.
that was the only way to tell stories. Many years later, you find out like I can tell stories with anything. I can tell stories with consumer goods. I can tell stories through marketing campaigns. I can tell stories in a lot of ways. And it's I still get to use that, even though at the time I thought, yeah, it had to be in TV. But anyways, yes, I worked in TV, and then I moved up to a coordinator. And before I left the industry, I was doing assistant directing work, um, and it was a lot of fun. It was, I think, one of the most fun experiences.
For
Uh,
sure.
you have no life though. I'm going to tell you, you're working 80, 90 hours a week.
Wow.
The people on the show or movie that you're on, they become your family,
Hmm.
and you don't see your real family,
Yeah.
because you don't know your schedule, you don't know your hours. You were working from 6 a.m. until midnight, and then you turn around and you're up at 6 a.m. again. Um, it is it is such a grind. The amount of people that come together in a short amount of time to make something like that is phenomenal, but it is it startups in comparison were more laid back than working in TV.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Because TV has a deadline you cannot miss ever, right?
It
And
doesn't. That's the and it's funny. I
and
took that in the early startup space. I was thinking, okay, what do we like today, this week, by
yeah.
tomorrow? And they're like, no, we have a month. I was like, oh, a month? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Great, Nicholas. Final tips for other marketeers out there?
I as much as you can, uh, for anything that you're trying to get out there into the market, eh, try to care about it. You would be surprised how few people in even the most creative environments just don't give a damn.
Hmm.
And it is such a differentiator and such a defensive moat if you can show up and actually care. And that sounds really silly and that sounds really dumb. And you think, yeah, of course I care, of course I care.
Hmm.
But like actually, like even if you have to pretend to care, if you can get into that headspace where you're like, this thing that I'm now in charge of promoting, it is my whole life. You are going to be approaching that in a way that nobody else is going to be approaching it, which will lead to creative and work that nobody else will produce.
Amazing. Amazing final thought. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. Nicholas, it was a pleasure. Wish you all the best.
Thank you for having me.